in this class, I don't know if they're here, maybe they are, gave me one memorable moment in a class not too long ago. We were studying Jewish history, and the student asked me, Dr. Byrd, why did King Solomon have 300 wives and 700 porcupines? My dear friend, that was concubines, 700 concubines. Porcupines, concubines, whatever, King Solomon. So, all right, that was the story. As a philosopher, I study, teach, and devise ways of understanding the world. And philosophers ask questions, probe answers, sometimes we actually come to conclusions, but very rarely. It is not the role of philosophy to deliver ready-made wisdom to bumper sticker questions. Rather, the role of philosophy is to ask uncomfortable questions, to interrogate conventional thought, and to be Dostoevsky's grand inquisitor of power. Philosophers dedicate themselves to future-oriented remembrance of the past in order to bring about a more reconciled justice and love-filled existence for humanity. In order to do this, we have to courageously face the ugliness of history. We have to face the deformations of ourselves, and we have to face the evil done by the very things we love. I need not have to tell you we live in an age of great troubles. We just came out of a global pandemic. The largest war since World War II is currently taking place in Eastern Europe with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Measles are on the rise. According to the International Court of Justice, an act of genocide is happening in Palestine. India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers, are trading attacks in Kashmir. Numerous civil wars are ongoing in Africa. A global economy is unstable. Income inequality is at its highest since the Gilded Age of the United States. The top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 50%. Voices without qualifications have supplanted expertise. And with the help of modern communications, those unenlightened voices have fashioned worldviews of millions of fellow citizens. And ever present is the threat of global climate change, which is not appropriately addressed by world leaders, will eventually lead to more famines, more floods, acidification of the oceans, mass die-offs, and the list go on and on. In the face of all this, it appears that half the world's population is refusing to leave Plato's cave, while the other half is retreating back into the cave. You are facing all of this as you go forth from this university. Consequently, you will soon understand just how subject you are to the world around you, to politics, to economics, to culture, to the ever-shrinking world, wherein social media has proven itself to do not be the best way of understanding the world, but rather an accelerant to social problems. Now, if you expected a philosopher to fashion a beautiful picture of the future, you asked the wrong profession. However, what philosophers like me are dedicated to is what Aristotle called the good, the true, and the beautiful, which exists along the bad, the false, and the ugly. And sometimes it is the bad, the false, and the ugly that give birth to the good, the true, and the beautiful. I would like to tell you a story about the good, the true, and the beautiful, born of the ugliness of history. It's an American story, a story about an American soldier. His name is Isaac Woodard, Jr. Born in 1919 in Fairfield County, South Carolina, raised in Goldsboro, North Carolina, Isaac attended segregated schools. Isaac was black, and he was born in the Jim Crow South, wherein black Americans were systematically denied equal rights and opportunities as white Americans, and were subject to intimidation, harassment, and random violence, including lynching. Despite the horrific conditions he endured as a youth, Isaac enlisted in the United States Army when he was 23 years old, knowing he was risking his life for the country that deemed him a second-class citizen. Isaac served in the South Pacific, where he would eventually be promoted to the rank of sergeant. Through his bravery under enemy fire, he received the Good Conduct Award as well as a service medal, and at the end of the war was honorably discharged. For 3.5 years he served his country, putting his life on the line, fulfilling the orders of his commanding officers. Like all soldiers at the end of the war, he looked forward to returning home to his family. Back stateside on February 12, 1946, he boarded a Greyhound bus traveling from Camp Gordon in Augusta, Georgia to North Carolina. He was heading home, finally. Along with other GIs on the bus, he sang songs, talked about his war experiences, and told his friends about what he looked forward to once he got home. The bus stopped in a little town called Batesburg, South Carolina, where Isaac asked the bus driver if he could quickly use the restroom. Perturbed by the interruption, the bus driver called the police, who forcefully removed Woodard from the bus. They took him to an alley, beat him mercilessly with nightsticks, and arrested him for disorderly conduct, saying he had been drinking alcohol with the other soldiers. Isaac was beaten throughout the night in the jail, with Chief Linwood Shaw deliberately targeting his eyes. His crime, you ask? Isaac said yes to the chief's questions instead of yes, sir. Isaac was blinded that night, never to see again. To remind you, Isaac was still in uniform, still wearing all the insignia of a man who bravely defended his country from the Japanese Empire that attacked it on December 7, 1941. He was a man who had every reason to hate America, but chose to love it despite the horror and terror of Jim Crow. He never gave up loving his country, even when it was vicious to him and his community. The famous actor and filmmaker Orson Welles read about Isaac's case in the newspaper, and shocked by the brutality, Welles spoke about Isaac's case repeatedly on the Orson Welles commentary radio show. It caused a national outcry, and even Woody Guthrie, the great American countercultural folk singer, wrote a song about it entitled The Blinding of Isaac Woodard. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People took up the case, and after a short investigation, Chief Shaw and others who participated in the attack on Woodard were indicted in the U.S. District Court of Columbia, South Carolina. The case was presided over by Judge Julius Waties Waring. Remember that name. By all accounts, the trial was a farce. The judge knew it. The local U.S. attorney responsible for trying the case on behalf of Isaac Woodard intentionally failed to do his job, so much so that Judge Waring believed he engaged in a dereliction of duty. In front of an all-white jury, remember, black folk couldn't serve on juries in Jim Crow. The defense hurled racial epithets at Woodard and played to the racist stereotypes he knew were prevalent in the South. And even though Chief Shaw admitted he abused Isaac on the stand he did, the jury of Chief Shaw's peers found him innocent. After which, having found no justice, Isaac left behind his beloved North Carolina and moved to New York, where he would eventually die at the VA hospital in the Bronx on September 23, 1992. Now, why is this story important? Yes, it is important to do what the philosopher Theodore Adorno calls mycology, or the study of people who do not even make it into the footnotes of history. Had Isaac's story ended with the injustice of the trial, he too would have been merely a footnote in an obscure history book. But reverberations happened, as they so often do with history. President Harry Truman had been aware of the trial, and he found its ultimate outcome unforgivable. He once wore the uniform of American servicemen, and like so many, he too was appalled by the way Isaac was treated. Here was a man who gave everything for his country, and yet it was not the Japanese in the South Pacific that took his side. It was his fellow Americans. Truman, who grew up in a deeply racist family, famously, if you remember, his mother wouldn't even sleep in the Lincoln bedroom, so deep was her antipathy for the Union. Truman sent a comprehensive civil rights bill to the U.S. Congress. By executive order, President Truman desegregated the U.S. military. This was the first radical change to come from the blinding of Isaac Woodard. Despite losing a lot of support for his anti-segregation politics, Truman was able to win re-election in 1948, but just barely. Remember the newspaper? Truman was on the wasn't the only one who was struck to the core at Isaac Woodard's case. Judge Wade's Waring, a native of South Carolina, was so appalled by what he witnessed in his own court, the rampant racism, the systematic denial of human dignity and respect, especially for people who served their country. He began to read every book he could regarding racism, psychological, and political, and economic effects it had on black folk and white folk. Having grown up in Jim Crow, he, like so many others, simply turned a blind eye to the horror of it all, believing it was simply the way it was. In 1951, Waring was one of 3 judges to hear the Briggs versus Elliott case, which sought to desegregate one particular city's schools. In an ex parte hearing, Judge Waring demanded from the NAACP lawyer, Thurgood Marshall, later on the Supreme Court Justice. He demanded that the NAACP challenge not just this particular school's segregation policy, but that they attack the full, separate, but equal policy that was normative throughout the South. Marshall pleaded with the judge, although they were against separate but equal, this was not the case that they wanted to challenge it on. But Judge Waring convinced Marshall to do it anyways, knowing he would lose the case. What was Judge Waring up to? Judge Waring wanted the opportunity to write a comprehensive legal dissent that would undermine separate but equal. Judge Waring took that opportunity and wrote the most profound legal rebuke of racist policies in education ever written in American history. As expected, the NAACP lost that case, but appealed the case to the Supreme Court, wherein 9 justices in the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education case used Justice Waring's legal arguments to strike down separate people, finding it inherently unconstitutional. This Supreme Court decision to end the inherent racist policy was the greatest reverberation of the catastrophe that hit Isaac Woodard. Isaac never knew it was his case that propelled this movement all the way to the top of the judicial branch of the government, a co-equal branch of the government. The influence of this case was well hidden behind the scenes of history, but nevertheless, it was Woodard, his duty to serve, his dignity in abuse, his courage amidst hate, that forced the country to reckon with its demons and to come out on the other end a better nation. And just 1 year after the war, a Brown versus Board of Education decision, Sister Rosa Parks refused to retreat to the back of the bus, bringing in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to head up on the civil rights movement. While Woodard's struggle for desegregation did not create the more perfect union, as the struggle for such unity continues today, it was a great step in the right direction, a step towards realizing our nation's motto, E pluribus unum, from the many, one. Dear Olivet graduates of 2025, I encourage you to learn from Isaac Woodard and the many other nameless and anonymous fellow citizens who strove to not simply for gain and pleasure, but for what the psychoanalyst Eric Fromm calls the happy mode of existence, but instead struggled for the good, the true, and the beautiful. I encourage you to understand that catastrophes, setbacks, and failures, like Isaac Woodard experienced, are not the last words. That the dialectic of history shows that from such catastrophe, great achievements are born. That the phoenix of love, compassion, mercy, and equality are born from the darkest despairs of hate and violence. Dear Olivet graduates of 2025, as you walk into this life, newly degreed, with centuries of knowledge accumulated in your heads, I ask that you, yes, look at the stars, ask the hard questions, choose the most meaningful path, even if that path is fraught with difficulties, even if that path is fraught with seemingly unsurmountable challenges, and even if that path is filled with Michigan-sized potholes. From an institution where the vision of the founding fathers and the founding mothers is a vision that transcends the way the world is and strives for the way the world ought to be. Don't shy away from adversity. For, as the abolitionist Frederick Douglass said, without struggle, there is no progress. Never fear the struggle. Embrace it, as did the founders of the University of Olivet in 1844, as did Isaac Woodard, as did Thurgood Marshall, as did Judge Waring, as did President Truman. Take that recalcitrant and prophetic spirit of Olivet with you in all things you do. And yes, make this world better, but start here, in America, in the land that Abraham Lincoln, in his address to Congress in 1862, described as the last best hope for Earth. In closing, I want to say, I love you all. Good luck in this world. This is your world. Fight for it.